There is power in the depths of our creativity. There is grace in the process of its birthing and reincarnation. There is beauty in reclaiming stories that have always been ours, but never owned or told by us. In all that there is, all that we know to be sources of hope and redemption, of untimely exposure and overdue bloom, there is meaning in the core of the creations that have been birthed from our artistry. It is one thing to make art and another to piece precious parts of your being to create a masterpiece that embodies your truth. You are a creator, twisting and turning the ideas in your mind to accommodate the essence of your creation. Every source of inspiration becomes a story of breathing life into your vision. Own your story. Tell your story. It will take moving mountains and dancing constellations, but wear it like an inherited title of royalty. It is your birthright. Hold it firm. Like a priceless treasure, you will live to learn that your story is made of more than just metaphors. Its plot is more than just memories. Your story holds proof of your growth. It illuminates your light. It is the narrative muffled by biases and stereotypes. It is the voice that pierces through the hearts of men, whose fangs will once again be tamed enough not to exploit the talent that is your work. In the core of these creations is whatever meaning your heart crafts of your soul. Allow the drums to beat and the flutes to blow. These become the tune of your being and becoming. Allow the eyes to wonder and the mind to ponder. These become the measure to the vastness of your mystery. And if you allow your inner truth unfurl, the power, the grace, the beauty will reincarnate in all of your creativity, in all that there is, all that we know to be, sources of hope and redemption.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yes. Welcome back to Daybreak Extra on Trust TV. The piece you just listened to is titled Source of Hope and Redemption, and it was composed by the brilliant Sapika Abdul Ghani Bello. She is a writer, spoken word artist, and certified youth trainer. She has performed poetry at major conferences around Nigeria and internationally, including events organized by the African Union, the Shehu Musa Yar'Adua Foundation, the Swedish Embassy, and the Young African Leaders Initiative, among other organizations and societies. She also won a number of awards for her creative work. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your piece was really lovely. I was swept away, to be honest.
I'm glad you found it so.
Yeah, well, actually, I was spellbound listening to those words. What inspires you?
Many things. My crazy thoughts. People watching. I look at people through the window when I'm passing by. News inspires me a lot. Generally, I would say the idea of storytelling and the power it holds, I think, is very important to my inspiration. And whatever it is that I see, I try to make meaning out of it and tell stories from it, because I think it is very important for us to tell stories.
Is this something you've always enjoyed right from when you were a kid, or growing up you just found that inspiration? Like, would you say when you were younger you like to read books, watch movies, watch films?
When I was younger, my dad would always give me books, and he had this like huge library with books that I would look around. Sometimes I would see titles that I didn't know what they meant, or like words, and he would give some to me and tell me to read them. After a few days, come back to him and like discuss it, have like a review kind of thing. So yes, I used to read books growing up. Regarding writing, I started writing at quite an early age just because I was a very shy girl, and I didn't like to talk to people. So I would rather write write letters, just journal, throw away like a piece of paper with my writing in it, with my thoughts. And so growing up, I had the habit of reading and writing, but then it evolved more into poetry, into articles, and a lot of other things that I do.
So when with all this treasure trove of talents that you actually have, I mean, like you write poems, you write articles, you write stories, and all that. Which one is your best storytelling medium?
Yeah.
Poetry, without a second thought.
Why poetry?
I think poetry has an interesting way of sending across a message. I can write about a topic without mentioning the topic, and I still pass across the message. And I like the idea of playing around with words, with tone, the highs and lows, the inflections in my voice, and that is where performance poetry comes in. So yeah, poetry I think is a very creative way of like organizing my thoughts and ideas in a rather lyrical way, I would say.
Well, listening to poetry actually, or watching poetry being delivered, is actually quite different from reading it.
From reading it, yes, it's like, I don't know, it's like someone reading to you. So she's carrying the, what do you call it? Like she's speaking with, how do you put it? It's like behind what she's saying, she's also giving you the tone. When she's sad, her voice would reduce. When she's happy, there's a high pitch. So it's more interesting than just picking it up and trying to read it like
well, it depends. Some people will actually like to read it at their own pace and digest it and make meaning of it in their own way.
Yeah, but why do you think when you listen to a song, it lasts longer?
But that's a song.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to explain to you like what rhythm does to words. When you're reading it just like a book, there's no rhythm, you're just reading. But when she's saying it, she's being intentional about.
We're talking about poetry.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Is there a difference between poetry and music?
There would be a difference, yes, but I think at the core of it is the idea of like rhythm, like I mentioned earlier, inflections in your tone, highs and lows, how you narrate the story. So with performance poetry, it's about the words, yes, but also sort of about how your voice passes the message across. So not just the words, but how do you like put emotion in it? How do you like enforce parts of it and drop the tone at some parts of it? And what experience do you give to your audience listening? And how does it affect them? Because then when, for example, I'm performing and there's this important part that I want to like communicate and make emphasis on, and I raise my tone, then it reflects on the audience as well. They're like, okay, yes, I feel this onto their last.
Yeah, that's the thing. But still, talking about making sense of everything, I think with a poem, you probably want to internalize it and read it at your own pace and make and draw whatever conclusions you want to do. You want to draw from that. No, don't get me wrong. I love when poetry is being performed. I mean, like just like you did right now, it's absolutely fantastic. But I think some people believe that it resonates more when you actually sit down in your own quiet place, in your own headspace, and you read it and digest it. So what do you think?
I think there's a difference between page poetry and performance poetry, and each of them serve different purposes. So with page poetry, when I read it and I can internalize it and analyze it at the time or at my own pace, I think the way the message is being written and passed across is different, and the way the audience also digests it is also different, or the reader rather. And then with performance poetry is also different. And again, with rhythm, with tone, with inflections in your voices, I think that is like the main difference. So in the way that you put your message in the words. With page poetry would be a bit different than the way you put your message with performance poetry. At the end of the day, they're poetry, but they're different. So even in writing, the writing process would not be the same.
Okay, so speaking about people having different resolutions, you know this thing that they say about when you see an artwork, it means it has different meanings to people. Would you say that's the same thing with poetry? Because poetry is words, so words are pretty direct. But do you think if you were to pick up a poem and I pick up the same poem, it might give two different meanings to two of us?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is where analyzing poetry comes in. A lot of times, I took literature as a course in school, and sometimes would have like full-on debates in class about what this particular poem means. Is it about a woman giving birth or a galaxy? And like there are two different things, like stars in the galaxy and a woman giving birth. Like where did you even get that, information from? But it's the same poem we're reading, and it's the same line, the same words, but sometimes it's not clear. Like I said, I would write about a topic without mentioning the particular thing. And even for myself, sometimes I perform poems or I post poetry on my social media, and somebody said, oh, this resonated with me a lot. This is what I got from your poem. And I'm thinking, this message that you got was not my initial intent, but like, I'm glad you got what you could make out of it, So we all read from different perspectives and different lenses, and I think that is also the beauty of poetry.
A lot of people, a lot of poets actually don't make that, or do not have that the performance bit in their repertoire. They just write, and that's that, and you pick it up, you read it, and that's all. But why did you decide to go into performance poetry? Or did it just happen organically, or did you just sit down and make a conscious, okay, I'm going to start to do this and I'm going to train for it and till I master it, or it just came to you just like that? Because
considering she mentioned earlier she was a shy person,
exactly, so
from writing to being bold enough to speak?
Exactly, to speak in front of people and transfer your message.
That makes sense. So when I was younger, I think primary school, secondary school, thereabout, I really liked the subject English, and I liked transcription, and I liked writing essays, and I just liked writing generally. So I had this very supportive English teacher who would write poems and give it to me to present. I am still quite a shy person. In like one-on-one interactions sometimes, but one thing about me I would say is that I don't feel shy on stage. When I'm on stage, I feel like I'm the only person in the world, and like the audience, they exist but not in my personal space, and the stage is my personal space. And I think most of what an introvert is like me would be like having your personal space. So I was never really shy on stage, and I think it took also a lot of practice, because I used to present a lot with whatever event we would have. Sometimes like TV stations would come to our school and I would make presentations. Sometimes like speech and prize giving day, and like I would give a speech, and I think that is what shaped me, and that is what like grew my confidence. So having started at an early age, and then a lot of practice, a lot of encouragement from my family as well. And with regard performance poetry, I think the influence of me starting early and given poems, even though they weren't really mine, was what made it like easy for me and quite natural to just go into performance poetry, because that was what I was used to, that was what I was introduced to, and when I would write in my head. I'm thinking, okay, this is how I perform it, and this is how it goes. So yeah.
So on an average, how long does it take you to write a poem?
Depends, anywhere from
5 minutes.
Yeah, that depends on the length.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you have written a poem in 5 minutes, haven't you?
I have. So it depends anywhere from, depending on the length of the poem, 5-10 minutes, I would say, to 10 weeks.
10 weeks. From 5 minutes to 10 weeks?
Sometimes I read poems and I don't go back to them until like days, weeks, sometimes months later. And I go back to it and I'm like, okay, I want to like write this poem and like reshape it and, you know, yeah. But generally, especially when I get the inspiration or I'm tight on time, it takes me about a day to write the piece, edit it, make sure it sounds when I'm performing the way it's in my head. So yeah.
All right. So do you read other people's poems, or do you just mainly concentrate on yours?
I read other people's poems. I think that was even how I started writing. My sister is a poet.
Oh, really? So it runs in the family.
So
you could say so. So she used to write poems, even though she didn't really share them. And she had this book where she wrote all her poems, and she would keep them away and not share them with anyone. And sneaky me would find it, go read it somewhere. And then that was how I was inspired to start writing my own poetry as well. So yeah, I read my sister's poetry, I read other people's poetry. Famous poets, Maya Angelou. I love reading Maya Angelou's poems. I think there's a force to it and there's power to it. I love listening to other poets as well. I listen to Safia El-Hillo, Ami Mahmoud, both Sudanese poets, Dike Chukwumerije, the Nigerian poet. So yes, I do listen and read listen to and read a lot of poetry. So
having to perform, because you've performed your poetry outside Nigeria before, what was the experience like for you? Very exciting,
a bit daunting in the beginning as well, because I think the first time I really did not expect it, and it just came like very quickly, and it happened very quickly. And then I was just traveling and I thought, oh my God, this is like a whole new audience in a whole different country. But I did my best and the feedback I got was amazing. And so there was like solace in that. There was like, well, not solace, sense of pride, I would say, that I did that. And I did that as a Nigerian, you know. Yeah.
So you represented.
Something like that.
So, will you say that most of your poems are solely from your mind, creative, or you do some form of research just to make sure you're authentic with your words?
It depends. Sometimes it's just from my head. It's from the inspiration and like the feelings or the thoughts that I get. Other times I might have to do research because I perform at events, and when an organizer invites me to perform at their event, I write poems according to the theme of the event. So 2 days ago, I went to the IBB Legacy Dialogue to perform, and I had to write something around that theme, something around politics and governance, because that was what we were speaking about. And development in those spaces. So I'd have to do like a bit of research, more research on IBB. Of course, I know who he is and what he's done, but more research about the things he's done, research around statistics. For example, my poem was about, or our poem rather, I collaborated with other creatives. Our poem was around women inclusion in politics and governance. And so I'd have to do research to learn more and to be able to write more and write, I think, something that reflects what is happening in our society.
So do you have like a collection of your poems written down in a book or something?
Maybe like somewhere in a Google Drive. Not that I've published it.
Yeah.
Publish it, not yet, but I hope to do so, inshallah.
Oh, okay. But you've been doing this for a while, so what's stopping you?
I don't know, honestly. I don't think there's anything stopping me, and now that we speak about it, I might just do it soon.
I mean, like, seriously, you should, and it's something that you should look into. Just like you said, your sister actually writes her own, and and you, just like you said, she hides it away from everybody, and well, that's for our own personal consumption. You have decided to actually put your own out there.
Yeah.
So I think maybe putting it in a sort of collection will not be a bad idea.
At all. I would definitely.
Speaking about your poems, do you ever show your work in progress to anyone?
Nope. No.
Rarely
ever.
No.
No.
Do you feel like if you were to do that, maybe an influence of their opinions rather would influence the direction in which you're going to take?
Definitely. Sometimes I think even though we don't want other things to influence our work, they do, especially like opinions. I think for me, sometimes my writing process is a bit messy, so I go back and forth. I write like random lines and like later put them together. Sometimes I write in an order, but many other times not. So I think if I show someone my work in progress, it wouldn't make a lot of sense and they wouldn't understand it. So I'd rather keep it to myself until I think it makes enough holistic sense for me to share it with somebody.
So, well, ballpark, how many poems do you actually have? I mean, like completed bodies of work. Yeah, the ones that you actually have that, okay, that these are your poems that you know you worked on and they're there, they're ready for the taking.
I don't think I know.
Yeah, ballpark.
Give or take.
Because it's
1,000,
long.
2,000?
Oh, 1,000 is a lot. I would say about 200.
Okay, thereabouts.
Thereabouts. Or the ones that I consider like poetry, because I think I used to write poetry that wasn't really poetry.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, the poetry that I called poetry, like I would just write in lines and stanzas. That was very early on when I was like much younger, and I would read my sister's poetry, and I would write pieces in like lines and stanzas, and I would call them poems. But then as I grew, I think I grew to like know that, or I grew to my own style rather. So now I have like a particular style of poetry that I would consider.
Which is a departure from the earlier style that you adopted?
Yes, it is quite different. It is quite different.
Okay.
Yes.
So have you jettisoned those early poems that you used to have? Or
No,
still
they're
there?
still here. They're still there.
Okay, because I think having them is important to show where you started from and where you are now.
Yep.
All right. So a lot of people are actually talking about, okay, you know, we're in Nigeria, and we just saw My Daily Hustle a few minutes ago, and everything is a hustle now, and talking about how lucrative this could actually be. So do you do like professionally? You have an agent, you put yourself out there, a manager, and all that. You get bookings, you get paid for your appearances. How does it work?
I don't have an agent or a manager.
Okay. Stop looking at her. Stop looking at her.
I don't understand. I'm looking for somebody to manage.
Yes, that's the thing. You're busy looking for somebody to manage up and down. So stop looking at her.
I mean, we could talk about that.
Ibrahim, as you left me, I found a new best friend. But why is that?
I think I just haven't gotten into things as I haven't really gotten into the business of the creativity.
Okay.
My sister is a coach, and she coaches me through. She's a life coach, so through a lot of things. I went to school 2 years ago in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Okay.
I went to the African Leadership Academy, and it was a bit of like a turn, because I concentrated a bit on like other aspects of what I was interested in, and not less poetry, but less putting out poetry, I would say. So I was away for the 2 years and haven't been as active in the space of poetry. But then now that I'm back, I think I'm getting back into it. But generally, when I used to be a lot more active before coming back, people do reach out to me and tell me, oh, hey, I have this event, you know, and I would like to have you perform, and then we'll talk about it. And yeah.
You do some business.
Yeah. I do some business. I think it's an important thing to do as well, because a lot of times we think creatives should just do free work, like it's just writing, you know, or it's just like performing, but it's not just writing and it's not just performing. And I think services should have like remuneration, like creative services as well. And I think it's very important for us to understand the importance and like power of creativity, especially in the world we are today. As it evolves, we get to learn more, and we should be able to do better, rather than saying, oh, the favorite thing to say is exposure.
Yeah.
You gain exposure, so we don't pay you. But like, I don't remember who said this, but exposure doesn't pay the bills.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
So,
It doesn't.
Well, yeah, speaking of, you know, social media and all of that, have you ever thought of going into content creating? Because what you're doing is some form of content. So is it a thought that has crossed your mind before?
Yes, definitely. I, again, before I left, when I was more active, I do create content, mostly poetry, for my social media pages, Instagram, Twitter. I also write on my blog. So that is also a sort of like content creation for my blog as well. And I'm getting back into it again. And even before, I wouldn't say like I left, I might have not have done it as much, but yes, I do create content, and I hope to do more of it, because again, the world is evolving, and we're seeing the power of social media and technology and like all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that there's a video that we have of you. Is it the same poem that you recited here?
No.
Oh, it's a different one.
Yes. It's
yeah. So maybe we can take a look at that and analyze it.
At home, I see hatred and how it burns, how we choke on the smoke, cough out the lies, the guilt and the cries. We are known for creativity, for bravery, blackness and slavery. We, the slaves to our very conscience, our very minds and the games they play on you and me, on us, on humanity, games of insanity, of inhumanity, the audacity of man to showcase brutality, to cause another's death and coerce prejudice unto their last breath. At home, when the clouds come together, dark, dense, almost as heavy as the weight of the corpses being stacked and buried, drops of hatred cascade and soak into the soils of our lands, grow and sprout chaos. Then love and peace fester beneath the soils of our very same lands, ruin the toils of our very brave heroes, ruin their dreams of our very great ones. At home, there are artists who paint and make mosaics from blood of the slaughtered, ashes of the lynched, and remnants of burnt down walls. At home, we take pride in the gallantry of past lion hearts and what they achieved of unity and concord, yet we still flee the cold touch of one another's hand to another supposed home that beckons us into uncertain survival. But for safekeeping, we shall write this in the pages of what we hope to someday call history, so that when we walk down the streets of our homes giving charity, we remember that beyond the fence of our houses, beyond the diagram of one country on the map, beyond every borderline, wherever in the gut of this clay-colored giant, Africa is home too.
So I was going to ask, behind poems are a bundle of emotions, like, so for you, what is that, or what are those emotions you go through when having to write your poem? Is it from loss, from joy, from pain? What is it for you?
I think a lot of it is frustration, especially like in the beginning. I write poetry that mostly reflects social issues, and so a lot of times, especially when I read the news and there are such heartbreaking headlines and very dreadful things to read about on the news, or just things happening around me, or things that are out of my control in some ways, I write. So I write about gender equality, I write about corruption, I write about like women's rights, a lot of things that come from a place of frustration for me, because these are things that we should work on, injustices in this day and age. I think because we talk about it a lot, I think it is about time we stopped talking about it and like taking action. And so yes, these are things that I write about. So frustration. Sometimes it's joy, sometimes it's hurt, loss, grief, a lot of things, whatever emotion that comes, and I get the inspiration to write, I do write. So a very wide range of emotions.
Okay.
So right now, if you are to imagine I am a young up-and-coming poet, what would you tell me?
I would tell you to just write. I think a lot of times we become critical of our own works, or we think, what would the next person say, or what does my audience think? But at the end of the day, what is most important is just to write. Do not procrastinate, do not think. A draft will never be perfect, so just write and keep writing and just never stop writing.
Whatever.
Just write.
All right. Well, that's sounds like sound advice.
Just before we go, I was going to ask if I'm able to pen down my thoughts on paper. Does that make me creative? Can I call myself a creative? Because I feel like everybody, to an extent, everybody.
Let me answer that question.
No,
you can't
please,
call yourself a
please.
creative just because you sit down and you scribble some things on a piece of paper does not make you a creative.
The reason why I'm asking is because to an extent, everybody can write. I mean, we all did creative writing in secondary school, but some people just didn't go. There's no way you didn't do it in English. You must have written a creative essay.
Do you know the kind of school I went to?
Right, please. So, does that automatically make you a creative, or you have to go through some form of process, style, form before you can now say, okay, I am a creator, I'm a creative?
I think you've said it. Process, style, form are things that constitute creative writing. Creative writing is quite intentional and deliberate, and there are tools and techniques to it as well. So you have forms of speech, that as well I believe you have done in school, but being intentional about the way you write and about the way you place your words and like craft them and put them in such a way that passes across a message that is just not plain, you know, that has some sort of style and form to it, I think is what makes it creative.
So you need style and you need form. That is exactly what you need to become a creative. So I don't know what kind of school you guys. I don't know what kind of school you guys went to, but I didn't know all of that. Well, we've been talking poetry right here on Daybreak Extra this lovely morning, and Zabika, has been wonderful having you on the show. I mean, like, I learned a lot. Yes. I don't know about somebody else.
I learned form and style.
I don't know. I'm not sure about anybody else, but I know that I've learned a lot, and it was quite enjoyable. And we're looking forward to that publication.
Yes, really looking forward to it.
Yes, but don't allow yourself to be sidetracked by managers. People that will come and start whispering in your ear that they want to be your managers. You know, some people like who will start doing that. So,
Ibrahim, you're an enemy of progress.
It's wonderful having you on the show, and we hope subsequently we'll have you back again so that we can talk more on poetry and words and form and style that some people are looking for.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. All right, still Daybreak Extra on Trust TV. We've been talking poetry and a whole lot in between, and we still have a lot more to talk about right here on the show. But for now, we'll take a short break, and when we return, the program continues. Do stay with us.